All right. Hello, we're here today to talk about, as we're here to gather as a brainstorming session for our choral graduate programs. So everyone in this chat either has an MM program in choral conducting or an MM and a DMA in choral conducting within their respective programs. I'm here with Dr. Barlow Bradford, the Director of Choral Activities at the University of Utah, Dr. Andrew Crane, Director of Choral Activities at BYU, Brigham Young University, Dr. Edith Copley at Northern Arizona University, and Dr. Nicholle Andrews at the University of Redlands. I'm Jace Saplan, I'm the DCA at the University of Hawaii. Hello, friends. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question, and that we can go ahead and get started. The first question is, how did you folks navigate any coursework, either with it either being choral literature or pedagogy, lessons, conducting lessons, and or practico within your respective graduate studio? And I'm actually like for Dr. Copley, would you mind getting us started?
Well, I had kind of an interesting semester in the spring. Well, we all did in a number of ways. But for me, it was interesting because on our rotation in the master's program that they are taking conducting, and it's as a class, but I'm also working in the spring with graduate conductors who are doing the recitals and working one-on-one with them doing the recitals. Well, a couple of the students had already done their recitals when all of this hit, so I had one more student to give a recital. And I had done some private lessons with him during the course of the semester, and then all of a sudden his lecture recital could not be a recital. He couldn't work with the choir. He couldn't do his recital. So it's unfortunate, but one of my grad students had to do just a lecture instead of an actual recital, which was, I think, pretty awful. But in that sequence of conducting classes, the students take a 3-semester sequence with me, and the last semester they do with orchestral conducting. So this spring they were studying with one of the orchestral conductors. So 4 of my graduate students were doing that. But I taught mostly undergraduate conducting. I had the whole undergraduate advanced conducting class in the spring, so I was teaching undergrads. As far as the choral literature sequence, I think, teaching choral literature is much easier to teach online, and that you can, they have all of their materials on BB Learn, and you can, or Blackboard, the Blackboard, and so they could access all the materials, and we could actually meet on Zoom because it's a lecture type class and a listening class, and so and discussion. So that's was certainly something that could happen. So believe it or not, at the graduate level, I feel like this was pretty easy for me. It was difficult to do an undergraduate class of 15 conductors, and maybe we'll talk about that in maybe some of these bigger programs, but that's kind of what my scenario was for the spring. It will be a little bit more, it will be different, of course, in the fall.
Thanks for the update. Dr. Crane, how did it go for you?
Yeah, I'll try to fill in any gaps that were different. We had some canceled recitals and things that we ended up, and in one case it was his final one, and so we ended up using patchworking other things he had conducted during the other semesters, which was okay because he did get a lot of public performance in the other semesters. So, but it's still not ideal. And then Core Lit is only in the fall for us of each year, so that wasn't an issue. And the other thing was my private lessons, the conducting lessons, we did all on this software called GoReact, G-O-R-E-A-C-T, which you might know about, which I think is a really great program. And I would say that the quality of the conducting instruction wasn't diminished all that much through GoReact. And sometimes we were synchronous, but mostly we were asynchronous. He would make a video on GoReact and submit it to me, and then I would go in there, and the way you can give feedback on that software is so slick, and you can even give video feedback. So if you want to demonstrate something, you can do that. So in that respect, it was okay. But the main drawback, as we all know, is the practical in-person stuff with the choirs.
I'm really interested about this Go React application that you were talking about. Did anyone else use that or are familiar with that? Can you talk a little bit more about that whole thing?
Yeah. So Go React, and you can just Google it. First of all, I think you do have, the university has to pay for a subscription, but last I checked, they were running like a free thing because of COVID. And anyway, it's all video based. So I use it also in my undergrad conducting class. We use it even when things are normal. We use this thing. So let me see what I can say. So you take a video of yourself right there in Go React, and it's an app, but it's also on the computer, so you can either do it from your computer or from your phone, and you make a video of yourself doing the assignment, whatever that is, and then you upload it to Go React, and then I, as the teacher, go into Go React, and this is where it gets really handy. I'm watching the video of the conductor doing whatever the assignment was, and when I'm ready to give feedback, I just start typing, and the video stops right in that moment. And so I say what I want to say. And let's say I want to demonstrate something. Well, then I have a little thing that I say, record me. So I click that and I record myself doing the thing, and it's all right in that moment. So when the conductor goes back to review the video, they're seeing the feedback as it happens instead of going back and rewinding and finding the spot that you were talking about. And you can give them video feedback, typed feedback, or audio feedback. And again, that real-time stopping of the video is kind of the key to it. You also can do synchronous stuff where it's, like you could do on Zoom or something, but it's that asynchronous video feedback thing that's the key to that.
That's awesome. Thanks, Dr. Crane. Dr. Bradford, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah. We do our private lessons in the fall, and we do a group seminar lesson in the spring. And so I didn't have to deal with private lessons. We just did only seminar in the spring. It was difficult, I found, because a lot of our seminar is indeed, we're conducting for each other, and they are making critique of each other. I didn't know about this one that Andy was just talking about, which seems better than what we were doing, which was on Zoom. We found that the lag coming on Zoom was made for a very difficult lesson, but we did it. My students said it was helpful to them. It was frustrating to me because I felt like I couldn't really see every little detail, that you can when you're in person. Our university canceled all of the ensembles. I don't know if that's what the rest of you did, your universities, if they just simply canceled. As of March 12th, we were down, which was interesting because a lot of us had just done the ACDA Western Conference performances just a few days earlier, and then we were shut down a few days after that. It was discouraging, I know, for the choir kids, and we're just trying to figure out how to move forward next year. But one thing I am doing this year is we always do our private lessons, as I mentioned, in the fall. And because I want to do them in person, and I know right now that outside is a lot better than inside, and in Utah we have good weather in the summer, we're actually going to do our private lessons this summer and do them outside so that we don't have any issues that way. And then we will not be doing them in the fall in an enclosed space. So that's at least one help that we have right now.
That was really helpful, and I know that Dr. Crane put in the chat that BYU ended on April 15th. Is that normal, or was that just a call that the university made? That's
when we don't have a spring break.
Okay.
So that's always when we end. Yeah.
Yeah, I know for a lot of we're changing our school calendar too, or we're at least discussing to change our school calendar. So I know a lot of institutions are going ahead to either end around right before fall break, or they're making a shift to distance learning after fall break. So yeah. Dr. Andrews, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say that's Thanksgiving for us. We will end in person just before Thanksgiving, and then after that it goes online.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. Dr. Andrews, how are things going?
They're going well. My conducting students were similar to Edie. They were working with the orchestra, though they were doing private lessons with me as well, but their ensemble was orchestra. And so unfortunately their recitals ended, but they did have opportunities to do individual pieces over the semester prior to COVID. We did continue private lessons, both conducting lessons and body mapping lessons, via WebEx, which is the equivalent of Zoom. It's just the platform that our university uses. And I found with one-on-one teaching, it was okay. There's still the lag, and there was still if one of us would talk over the other one, then we would miss each other with the delay. But it worked. It's not my ideal platform, but it worked. And again, much like Edie, I was teaching advanced conducting for the undergraduate class, where I had 24 in that class. And this was the point, it was the point in the semester where they were all ready to conduct each other. So we had one conducting session, and then the course ended. So I worked with them in revamping the course and how it would be most beneficial to everyone. And we continued to meet during our regular class time via WebEx.
Okay. Is Dr. Andrews frozen for everyone else too? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Andrews, I don't know if you can hear us right now, but we're just going to go ahead, and then once we see you back in sync, we'll have you finish. I think here at for UH, we made the decision to we went ahead and switched over to virtual in mid-March. I think like mostly everyone, and it was difficult because our graduate program at that time, 2 to 3, basically our entire graduate conducting cohort, they did not have really great access to Wi-Fi. So anything that was Zoom related or anything that tried any sort of synchronous activity was really difficult. And we didn't know about this Go React thing, which seems like might be a game changer. So what we ended up doing instead is I had them just focus in on onsets and cutoffs for 2 to 3 weeks. And I kind of had them conduct people in their household with basically just different, like using Laban and like Dr. Andrews was talking about body mapping. But once things started to open up, and then and when our governor declared that going to the beach was okay, then we decided to just use the outdoors as our classroom, and we basically all met up at a beach in a socially distant way and learned about resistance in the ocean. So we were just trying to use like different ways that weren't necessarily in service to or contingent upon technology. And I think for our outdoor field trip to the beach, I think was out of the box. Would I do it again? Not sure, but I'm happy that we did it, and it was in the ocean and we had a good time. Socially distanced, of course. Dr. Andrews, you're back. We lost you, I think, 30 seconds into your spiel. So why don't you go ahead?
Yes, I saw everything
why don't we just
freeze.
Why don't we just try that again? How are things
Okay,
going?
so things are going well. My conducting students were conducting orchestra, much like Dr. Copley, and they unfortunately missed out on their recitals, but I did teach one-on-one via WebEx, and the private instruction went well. It's a platform similar to Zoom. It was great for one-on-one. It was more challenging for my advanced conducting class, where it was an undergraduate class of 25 students, 25 students. And so they were right at that point in the semester where they had to start conducting each other, and they had one session in. So together we revamped the course as to what would be most beneficial both for them and for the platform where we were able to teach and learn together. So that's kind of where we stood.
Thanks. Happy that we got all of your thoughts on there.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So Dr. Crane, I think, poses a really important question for us to discuss, because I think in all of these aspects of how we've worked with our conducting students, a lot of it at the surface level is very performative, right? It doesn't really address to the nitty-gritty of using gesture to address and to change sound, or to talk about things that go deep into rehearsal technique. So since with all of our solutions that we discussed, they're not really conducting other humans in real time. What are some solutions, or what are some thoughts that you folks have, and how we can address those specific skills like error detection or discussing on how to change a sound through gesture? What are some thoughts that we have?
Well, I'll just chime in really quick. One thing that we've done in the past, there's a book. Do you guys know the book by Paul Hondorp? And I'll put his name in the chat here. I think it's called Choral Error Detection, actually. And this book has accompanying recordings. And, you know, it's actually pretty slick. The choir is deliberately making errors, you know, and there may be other things like this. So you listen and you find where the error, and sometimes they're blatant, like they're singing the wrong notes, but other times it's more subtle things. So that's, and I've used that even when we're normal. So that's something that we could do. But also, and again, we don't know exactly what's happening at BYU for the fall, but in the case that they do allow us to have ensembles of some number, even if that number is 10, I'm still planning to let the grads, you know, have at it, and maybe even more than usual, because we're not really going to be worrying about concerts. So why not let that be kind of a lab experience for grads? Yes, it's not the same with a small ensemble, but it's something. And so hopefully there'll be something for them to conduct, small though it may be.
Dr. Copley?
Yeah, I have used the Paul Hondorp book as well. It is like Choral Error Detection, I think is the name of it, just like Andrew said. And I've used that in my undergraduate classes, and I've used it a little bit in my grad classes. And it has a CD, and the book, I think it's really good. And there's like, Andrew, what, like 40, almost between 40 and 50 exercises in there.
There's a lot, and they're all like different.
Start my undergraduate class, and just say, okay, let's work on, let's do a couple of these to start the class. And there's a form that they can fill out, you know, and actually mark on the score and what are they hearing. And sometimes I have them handed in, and sometimes I don't. So I think that's a great tool if you don't know about this choral error detection book. As far as what I'm planning to do, you know, I think it's going to be, well, you know, the choir that I conduct is like usually 64 or more singers, and I'm seriously considering making the choir a little smaller, so that I can actually rehearse them in octets. And then I'm going to actually have a grad student that will be in, you know, like I wouldn't have more than one grad student in one of those octets, so that they can actually be a leader within that. And I'm also going to have choral music education majors be leaders within those octets. And then I would meet with the octets every week, but they would, the leaders would then also have the opportunity to rehearse with them either virtually or outside or whatever. I'm planning to do as much as I can while the weather permits to do things outside with the ensemble, and to give grad students an opportunity to be conducting in front of them and using their ears and doing those kinds of things. So because we're starting early, we're starting in August, we should have a number of weeks where the weather is quite good, you know, in Flagstaff. A number of weeks that we could do that. But I'm planning to teach the choral literature class in person. We are on campus in the fall. It's definite. We are here. It's been announced. So they are doing, you know, disinfecting protocols, and all students required to have masks. And we just had a town hall with the president of the university like an hour ago with our college. So they went through all the things and that they're going to do. So we're planning to be on campus. So as much as face-to-face that we can do, we're planning to. And then, but I think there's going to be several things like the choirs that will be a blended learning. Also, they're outfitting every classroom on campus with microphones and cameras, so that if students, gets sick or whatever, or to allow social distancing, maybe half the group will be meeting live and the other half is actually watching, with video and listening. It's all going to be recorded and video. And then that's another thing that like half the group, like a chamber ensemble or whatever, group of 16 or whatever, would be meeting while the other 16 are watching at home. And then they flip. And then, so that you can actually follow the social distancing protocols on campus. So, I mean, that's the plan that I'm thinking of. Of course, performances, who knows what that's going to be like, but I think those are going to be all probably live streamed and that we'll have to do recordings of different things. But that said, I think this whole scenario is going to build individual musicianship, because if they're meeting as octets, it's kind of like, okay, here we go. This is what you need to prepare for that day, and you're the only one singing it. So you better come prepared, when you're doing it. And then actually featuring the octets in the concert. Like, let's have octets performing pieces. Let's have smaller chamber ensembles performing it. And then let's go to a big area to actually record the whole choir. Maybe it's in a gymnasium or in the auditorium, spaced out everywhere, to do some recording, so that it's just going to have more accountability, individual accountability.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a question about the model of the high flex model. So you have like 16 people there, 16 people observing. If you're at home, is the expectation for them to sing along with the choir, or are they observing and writing down observations? What does that look like if they're home?
Well, I mean, like, as I said, I think there's going to be octet meetings that would be just working on their rep. And then maybe we're going to combine a couple to make a chamber choir of 16 that would do kind of an alternative kind of thing. But the people at home would be actually observing rehearsal, taking notes, listening. And I'm thinking the same way I do if someone is ill, like in the past when somebody comes up and goes, I think I have strep throat, and then you say, go home. Or if they have, I think I have a terrible cold, like, get away from me. Put them over on the side and they actually write. They sit and listen to the rehearsal and they write down everything they've heard. And it's fantastic. After the rehearsal's over, they come up with these just massive things that they're hearing. And that's my thinking, not singing online, but listening and writing and then emailing it all to me of what they're hearing. And I think that builds their musicianship too, in terms of what they heard and how they would address it. And then the next day or whatever, they'll flip. And then with all that information, we can address, hey, your colleagues said this is what was happening, blah, 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 blah. And then we'll do the, back and forth. I think in some ways, as I said a minute ago, it's going to really be helpful for their ears and for their musicianship.
Thank you. Dr. Bradford, anything to add?
Yeah, I think we're going to do something similar. At least that's the plan. I read studies probably every day. I read one an hour before this meeting, the one coming out of Germany, where they're saying that it's really not as bad as we thought in terms of singing, and they're talking about droplets versus aerosol and what does all of that mean. I'm still nervous about it. And I don't want to be the one choir where one of my students gets sick. It would just, be horrible, I think. One thing that I have talked to our engineer, we have a full-time recording engineer at the University of Utah. He feels that we could set up some rooms that would be wired analog rather than digital, and that we could have video and headsets for each of those students, and that the conductor could also have that in the conductor's own space as well. So each of the singers would be in a separate space. The conductor would be in his or her own space, and that we could have ensemble rehearsals that way, so that they would indeed hear in real time without any issue of spreading. The fact that I have 3 graduate TAs, I think allows for something like this, where we can be splitting up the choir into these smaller groups. My thought is that I would probably do the same rep with each of the quartets or octets, whatever we can do. And and then we would build as we can. That I'm hoping to make music technology one of the requirements of all of the choral students, so that they know how to record properly, that they know how to edit, they know how to create ensemble recordings with their colleagues. I think this will be very valuable information once they graduate. We're hoping that we're able to offer in both the choral and the voice area classes right now that would be specific to what we're calling COVID time. These are special classes that would not be taught normally, in an effort to encourage our students to continue their education now, rather than just saying, well, I'll just wait for a couple of years until this settles down. Because I do feel like we have a way to have a unique and very educational choral education right now. Just as Edith was saying, I feel like our seniors are going to be put under the microscope more than normal, and will likely come out being better musicians. They may not like it to begin with, but I think that they're going to learn a lot over doing this. I did try this summer with my group in town, Utah Chamber Artists, a virtual recording. As much as I hated them, I just thought, okay, I have to try this. And it was incredibly successful. When we finished, it sounded like my choir, which was a little bit shocking to me. I really surprised about, wow, that sounds like us. And it was good, and our engineer is fantastic. He's in the choir. He's brilliant at this stuff. And we're actually going to do some projects this year with choir and orchestra, all virtual. And I think it's going to be a success. I think we'll do the same types of things at the University of Utah. We do have some larger rooms to where if we feel that things are working and the studies are coming out and it seems like it is indeed accurate, that we could be in a space without infecting, by having the type of distance that we need. We may try that. Again, I think that if we had headsets and that we were plugged in all to the same place, that we would be able to hear in real time. And if we're spread out in a concert hall, if we had 20 or 30 singers spread out all around the entire hall, and they could hear with a headset and ear both, that we might have some success that way as well. But when we finish the year, what I'm saying to my students is, you're going to have a year's worth of recordings, not a year's worth of performances under your belt. And I think that there's something attractive about that, I think.
Dr. Crane, you had a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask to those of my colleagues whose universities, like Edie, for example, have said that you're going to go in the fall, that you're going to be in person, because BYU hasn't said that yet. So I'm curious about this. Between the university and you, there's now the department, right? The School of Music and the department. Has your School of Music or music department chairperson made some kind of unilateral decision for the whole department, or has it been left up to the individual areas, choral, instrumental, whatever?
Andrew, at NAU, we have not gotten any kind of, directive in terms of the school. I think we're working on a new schedule. I don't know what your universities have experienced, but our College of Arts and Letters was one of the 4 colleges on our campus that was just absolutely decimated. I mean, they cut faculty like crazy. And in the music faculty, we lost 2 or 3 part-time people, but we lost like 6 full-time people that they cut out of the School of Music. And it was people that, I'm going like, well, how can you not have, this applied faculty on our campus? One of the instrumental applied faculty they didn't rehire. And I'm like, can you actually have a band and an orchestra without a bassoon teacher? It's just those kind of things. But I think what we're going to have to do is back fund some of these people so that it can happen. But there's what I think is happening at NAU right now, well, I know, is that the School of Music is waiting. We're now just getting like, okay, school's going to start here. here's the budget situation. Here's the safety protocols that we're going to be putting into place and what we're going to do. Here's the equipment we're planning to purchase so that we can make things safe. We're working on a block schedule for some of our like liberal studies classes so that kids would come for 7.5 weeks and do a block, and then the class would be offered again for 7.5 weeks. So intensify the class for 7.5 weeks to minimize the number of enrollments. So doing that kind of thing. We don't think that the School of Music is going to be using a block schedule, but because of the cuts that we've had, we're going to have to rebuild the schedule. People that, you know, are going to have to step up and maybe cover some classes that they hadn't taught before. So right now we're in flux, and I think what we're looking at is like July. In July, we'll actually get kind of like, okay, here we're hoping to have the schedule built by then, and we'll know kind of what we need to do. But as of right now, it is not going to be like, okay, hey, choral, whatever you think, band, whatever. No, it's not like that yet. I think there'll be a directive from the director of the School of Music who will tell us like, well, this is what we can do. And same thing with availability of classrooms. Band room's really quite big. So would we be putting like one of the music history classes in there so that we can actually do social distancing in the band room with a music history class? I mean, that's where I think we're going to be, but we won't know probably till next month.
So with regards to the University of Redlands, they have sent an email to all of the faculty, and we have been asked if we want to teach our courses online, hybrid, or in person. And then once we decide that, the students will have the opportunity to pick their schedule accordingly. So if they know that they are compromised and they need to do all online classes, they can adjust accordingly. They are moving all of our larger classes into our concert halls and our bigger rehearsal spaces to allow for social distancing along with the cleaning and all those things. But with regards to ensembles and the School of Music, we are meeting this week to decide what's going to happen with the ensembles. And the plan is that all major conducted ensembles will move forward in the same way. So it's not that choir gets canceled, but band and orchestra continue or something along those lines. Just to jump back as well with regards to our plans for the fall, I didn't jump in on that conversation, but we also have the Masters in Vocal Chamber Music, which is actually a summer program taught by my colleague, Christopher Gavitas. And so this is our trial run almost to see how this is going to work for the fall. And what we've done is purchased microphones for everyone in the program, and they are doing virtual ensembles, but they're going to each be responsible for a virtual piece and then build differently. So for example, the first one will be starting with Christopher singing bass, which is a great opportunity to build your ensemble from a king singer. So he'll start on the bottom, and then they have to build accordingly from him. The next piece, they start on the top and build down from there. And they're working daily with each other virtually to make that work. We plan with our larger ensembles to go into smaller groups, much like Dr. Copley was talking about, and to have both high level performing undergraduate students and master students coaching the individual groups, and then having a multitude of pieces so that there's one that everyone is learning. So in the event we can get together by the end of the semester, we have something to sing, but also that they have their own individual pieces. And then I'm very fortunate that my husband is actually the sound engineer at the University of Redlands. So we have tech built in. I'm in quarantine with a tech, which is amazing. So I'm the artistic director of Phoenix Chamber Choir in Vancouver, and we've been doing that a trial run with those virtual choirs as well. And it's incredible because we've done 3, and they're more pop tunes just to support quarantine and the healthcare workers and those kinds of pieces. And so it's been done through a click track, but now we're actually doing one by a Canadian composer, and it's me conducting and them having to build to me conducting. And it's a completely different experience. And it's opened up a lot of conversation about gesture and where they speak, and is the vowel or is the consonant on the beat? Is it on the down? Is it on the up? And then the end of that conversation, I'm kind of jumping around all over the place, and somebody's at my door is probably Amazon, but the last part is that my husband is teaching a bunch of our students to learn how to put virtual ensembles together over the summer. So he just had his first class today, so he's meeting with them multiple times a week. So in the fall, they can be doing an independent study and be useful to the ensembles to actually help produce, because the amount of hours that go into producing those ensembles, it's incredible. So I'm fortunate to be married to an engineer on that side, but I think that answers all the questions.
Thanks, Dr. Andrews. It seems like, especially since Dr. Crane put this in the chat, that a lot of institutions, especially within our region, are having the conversation about dividing their ensembles up. And for the University of Hawaii, like Northern Arizona University, our president made the decision, or basically put out into the universe, that we are in some capacity going to be offering face-to-face instruction. It wasn't necessarily based on us filling out a survey or whatever. The confines of if we're going to be online or not was based on the population of our classes. So any class that is over 50 students goes online. And so one of the issues that we had for our large symphonic chorus was to put out to our administration with contingency plans of keeping the course face-to-face, and stating that we're going to be meeting in small groups. It works out for us here at UH because the small group sequence of splitting it out into groups of 8 to 10 falls in line with our choral literature sequence, because we're starting this semester with medieval to Baroque. So that provides a lot of opportunity for us to kind of link the literature class to their podium experiences. And so I think that was important. Something I wanted to put out into the conversation too is, you know, as we were encouraged by our chair to go into our classrooms and to configure it in ways that are in alignment with CDC protocols before the squad of individuals came in to kind of declare how many students could go into the class. So we had a grassroots effort first to go into the class out with a tape measure, spike our classroom experiences, just so that when the university administration comes in, they could kind of see, oh, okay, this is how the choral director wants it, and let's see if we can find a middle ground there. And so for the most part, because our ensemble directors went out and distanced their own respective classrooms, the findings of the CDC protocol team were in alignment with us spacing our classrooms out. So I think that's important to mention. Our next point of discussion basically comes, we're gonna truncate this question on takeaways or next steps for summative experiences for our graduate students. So if we had a graduate student that is in their last year, or for some reason they're graduating in fall, and we're thinking about recitals or any sort of oral exams or anything that is a humongous checkpoint for the graduate programs that we have you folks stepped into a space of innovation, or how are you folks navigating that right now? Dr. Copley?
Well, as far as our oral exams are almost always in the spring, and they're in the late spring. It's kind of a culminating thing for the grad students. You know, because I was going to retire this year, I had a lot of students that were interested in coming to NAU, and then I would get on the phone and talk with them, and they say, well, I heard that you're going to retire. Then I said, yeah, I am, but it's still a great program, and so a lot of people, you know, decided, nah, I'm not going to apply if she's going to retire. Well, now I'm back. So the program's about half, or even a little more than half. Usually I have about 4 or 6 grad students, and I have 2 grad students this year. So I only have 1 student that's a returning student, and so I only have 1 recital. And so what I'm planning to do is for her recital to make that recital late, like in the spring, late as possible. And hopefully we'll be able to, you know, who knows, knock on wood, maybe a vaccine will happen, you know, cross fingers, you know, by early spring semester. And so maybe, you know, and my grad students, when they do their lecture recitals, have 8 rehearsals, 8. And so hopefully by that last month of school that they could have their chamber choir rehearsing and they could do their final project with an ensemble. So that's my hope. And same thing with the orals will also be way at the end of the year. So as far as culminating or like, the main things of the degree, they are going to happen late in the spring for me, and nothing like that in the fall. The thing to me that's disheartening is what's already been said, and that's the actual performances, are probably going to be something that's streamed or recorded or whatever. And I know that it's possible for us to even monetize that and actually put it up and actually have tickets sold to it. I mean, there's all kinds of, I've been investigating all kinds of ways to maybe generate funds, but all of our big things that we do, the holiday dinner, our jazz madrigal festival, all of those things are probably going to be canceled. So our ways of making money are gone, and all of our budgets are gone. So we have to do everything with no money this year. So I think a lot of us are going to be, in terms of how you're going to adjust. I'm planning to go back to the choral library and picking things that we've done in the past and really connecting with the choral canon, maybe doing, as you said, a lot of the historic repertoire that would be coupled with your choral lit sequence so that your grad students would have an opportunity to actually be conducting people doing those things. Because usually my graduate conducting class is about eight or 8 to 10 people in my graduate conducting class, because other graduate students want to take it. And we have a choir that we sing for each other, and we won't have that. We won't have it this year. So I think that's a great idea.
It's amazing with all of the fact that we're getting cut across the board, whether it's income or whether it's budgetary. And now in order to produce the music, we need the technology, which costs money. So it's kind of this catch-22 that how do we do this?
Yeah, I agree. And our university just said, oh yeah, we're still $26 million short out of the 96 million that we, are projecting. And so, but we're going to buy cameras and microphones for every classroom. And we're kind of going like, yeah, and how much was the bassoon teacher? So yeah.
Yeah, I think just navigating technology has been difficult, especially as we talk budget and we advocate for our needs. I know a strategy I had was being in contact with IT, advocating for technological support that way. And like Dr. Bradford's graduate students, I had one of our grad students kind of step in and facilitate our virtual choir experience as entrepreneurial learning. But I think realistically, our graduate students didn't sign up for that at the first, and so they're coming in the development of these skills, not necessarily by choice, but by necessity. So, yeah. Dr. Crane?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So the oral exams, we actually have had a couple that we had to do over Zoom, and that seemed fine because that format's okay. With regards to recitals and stuff going forward, we're just keeping all our fingers crossed that there's some group of bodies that you can spread out in a hall large enough to make it work. So that's really unknown. I will say, just adding one more little piece to this whole conversation, is I did have a student who's set to graduate he has one more year, okay? And he asked me, he said, should I hold off on applying to DMA programs because this year that's coming might be compromised in terms of videos I can put together, and I think that's a conversation that needs to happen. I mean, should a second year master's student hold off on a DMA application given the current circumstance? And I answered him the best I could, but something that I think a lot of these folks are going to be thinking about.
Can I just mention, having a DMA program here at the University of Utah, we're not taking anyone this year. I actually didn't, excuse me, we don't really have the room, but beyond that, we're just not planning on trying to take more. And I'm guessing that there'll be quite a few that would be doing the same, just because of what you said, Andy. I can tell you what we're doing with one of my students who intends to graduate this year. He's DMA from Taiwan. And our students have to do a lecture recital as their final recital. excuse me, got some in my throat. So he wanted to do, for his lecture recital and his DMA paper, he wanted to catalog Taiwanese composers, choral composers, their works, and then also talk about how do we in the English-speaking world deal with the Chinese language. And he's been very successful with my choirs there and teaching them Chinese, and wanted to have this as part of his paper. So we decided that for this year that he could continue with that idea, and that he would need to build a recital virtually. And that in the time of COVID, that this was kind of an interesting project that he would need to do to figure out how to have artistic ensembles in the midst of quarantine. So that's how we're going to move forward with him. He's technology minded, and I think he'll do very well with it. I think he's going to use some singers from our school at the University of Utah, but he's also going to tap into some of his friends in Taiwan and work with some pieces there as well. So his choir is going to be coming from various places in the world, if you will, which I think is also an interesting concept. It certainly is not traditional, but I don't feel like anything we're doing this year is traditional. And I'm not trying to take the traditional into what we're doing right now. I'm trying to, in essence, reinvent and say, here's what we have. What can we make with this that is wonderful and artistic? And that's what we're going to do with our recitals as well. My master student, my 3 students, she's already done enough for her recital needs, so she could go ahead and graduate, so I don't have a problem on that one. But that's what we're doing.
Thanks, Dr. Bradford. Dr. Andrews, anything you'd like to add? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
my mouse wasn't working.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I'm Canadian, but I'm very fortunate to live in Southern California. So we have large outdoor spaces where we can do our performances. I'm hoping with our smaller ensembles. So again, once we have the meeting with our major conducted ensembles this week, then I'll know for sure. But ideally, my goal is to be able to have the chamber choir rehearse and perform either in our Greek theater or on our quad, or somewhere where we can have social distancing space that's appropriate.
We're nearing the end of our hour together. Does anybody have any last words of wisdom, or would like to kind of put some final points out into our discussion?
One thing I just want to share is I want everyone to really support each other and be aware of the fact that we're all struggling, trying to figure out how to make music, and to just really rise up to the challenge and support each other's programs, because some people are going to have technology, some people are going to be married to sound engineers, some people are not, and we need to figure out how we can support one another and support our students. And my goal is that if I figure out something that works, for us to bring it forward and see if it works for someone else. So I think the more we can be in communication with each other, the better.
Yeah, I also want to just say that I think in this situation, I just read an article this morning, was also out of Germany, that was talking about aerosols and so on, and they're not really sure, and it was talking about instrumental music really more than anything else, like how much aerosols come through like a French horn versus an oboe versus a flute versus, those kinds of things. And I know that all of us, Barlow mentioned this, that, almost every day we're clicking into a new webinar to find out what it is, what's going on now, and what can we do. And I mean, I don't think I've ever spent so much time on the computer in my entire life as I have in the last few weeks. But I think Nicholle hit the nail on the head, that we really need to support each other. We need to share things with each other when we find them. And I know that there's lots of task forces and things that are going out there. Like this week, ACDA has another webinar out, I think on Thursday, maybe it's tomorrow, on copyright. And so that's coming out tomorrow. But I think more than anything else, that we're in a situation we're going to have to assess the risk. That's the big thing, is what is the risk? What can we do? What's safe for us and for our students. But the other thing that concerns me most about this whole situation, especially if we kind of go, hey, this is what we're going to do, and then all of a sudden the university or some other entity goes, no, 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 we can't do that anymore. We're going to have to pivot, and we're going to have to go totally online again. That we're all ready to kind of do that. And as a result of, if that pivot happens where we have to do what we did last spring, my biggest concern is keeping and building community within the choral choral ensembles, that they maintain connection and so on. And I found that was probably one of the hardest things, was to get them all together, talk about things and so on. But it's, as we all know, it's just not the same. So making sure that we really communicate with each other and with our students much more regularly than maybe that we ever had in the past. So those are my two biggest concerns. Yes, the music's important, the quality of instruction is important, but I think the risk and the community building is, I think, even more important.
Dr. Crane?
I don't really have much to add, but one thing that we've talked about in our conducting faculty is kind of what Edie was saying, but once you lose some students to, maybe they're not coming back to school at all because they're afraid for the health, or they don't want to do a virtual thing, man, it's hard to rev the engine back up. And so that's kind of our biggest fear, is to keep the vitality of the program, even in the midst of, it doesn't really matter at this point, is your choir sounding great or whatever. It's just, can you keep bodies in this program in the midst of this? So ideas about that as we go forward are helpful, I think, too.
Thanks. Dr. Bradford, anything to add?
No, I would actually agree with all of you. I do have hope that when we all feel it's safe to be back in the same room, that we're going to have a flood of people coming in. I think that the absence of live rehearsal and performance is, it's powerful, quite frankly, in people. They want to be there, and I would have to admit that even I didn't realize how powerful it was, even though I was doing it every single day. And I knew that having it gone has really been quite an eye-opening experience. And I feel that a lot of people will be that way. So I'm not as worried about the idea that once this is done, we're not going to have bodies. I think we will. I hope so. I do think community is important. I really feel that this is one of the things about the idea of bringing my students to school, even if we're doing small groups. They'll be doing that small group, but then they're also going to see each other in the hall. And like Edith, University of Utah, we're doing, it's required to have masks in all public spaces. And so the students are going to be able, I think, to safely interact so that we have community building that way. It's not the same as singing right there together. There's nothing like that, but we will have some community at least.
Thank you all.